Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the Student Agencies podcast. Today's guest is Stephanie, partner at Ivy Hill Asset Management, a portfolio company of Ares Capital Corp. Stephanie graduated from Cornell as an applied economics and management major and was a varsity soccer player. But her first real exposure to operating responsibly came through student agencies, where she managed CP early in her time at Cornell and was tasked with turning around a struggling business. Professionally, Stephanie took a non traditional path through finance, moving between the buy side and sell side, navigating the financial crisis, and ultimately building a long term career in credit investing. In today's conversation, we talk about how early responsibility, betting on yourself through uncertainty, and how judgment compounds over time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Willie.
Of course. So Stephanie, to kind of start, can you take us back to Cornell when you were there, kind of what you're studying, and how did you hear about student agencies and what role did you have here?
Yeah, sure. So I was there at Cornell from 1999 through 2003, and I picked Cornell because honestly I had no idea what I wanted to major in, and one of the main reasons I chose Cornell was because of the breadth of fields that it offered, the diversity of the different schools, and I just knew that if I could take a variety of courses my freshman year, I could figure it out along the way. And so that's basically what I did. I entered the arts and sciences school as an undecided major, and I did just that. I took a bunch of everything from economics to biology to a basic computer science class, and Spanish I think was in there too, and just try to see what fit and just enjoy my first year and figure it out. As you mentioned, Willie, I did play in the varsity soccer team, and many of my older teammates were A majors. At the time, it was called Army, and they all seemed to enjoy it. And I attended a couple lectures with them to just get a taste of what it was and whether that's something I would be interested in too. So towards the end of my freshman year, I began the process of transferring to the ag school where that major resided. At the time, it was not yet the separate Dyson school that it is today. And so that's basically how I decided to move to the applied economics and management major. And then as far as student agencies is concerned, between my freshman and sophomore years, I had the opportunity to stay at Cornell for the summer instead of going back home or finding whatever job in the interim, and work at student agencies. Honestly, I don't recall exactly how I learned about it. It was probably something in the A major or at the in the ag college that I saw the opportunity. But my roommate and best friend at the time, she and I were both transferring to it, and we decided to give it a shot. And Dan Cathan, who was the CEO at the time, assigned us campus promotions, and we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into.
And so what did that look like? So it sounds like you were in for a surprise. What did the surprise look like?
Yeah, I had to learn what campus promotions was. I had no idea. We were just freshmen and we hadn't seen those products, the campus promotion products yet anywhere. But we quickly familiarized ourselves with the three main products. And to be honest, I don't even know what it is today. It's probably super different given digital and all that. But at the time, it was all physical advertising products. It was a Super Savers coupon book, a Greek life directory, and then an Ithaca Gorge dining menu or restaurant menu brochure, all physical. That was what it was back then. I'm really dating myself now. But basically, it was going to be selling placements in those products to the local establishments. And Dan Cathan assigned us campus promotions, and I just remember him saying the business had not been successful in recent years. And I didn't really know what that meant other than that it had not been generating a profit in a while and was in need of a major turnaround. And so upon really digging in, it seemed that previous managers really just didn't stay connected with the surrounding Ithaca community. All the old records that we found were just that. They were super old. They were just physical papers, and I don't even know if there's anything on the computer about anything. So we essentially had to start over and just start from scratch. And what we did is we made a list of every business in College Town and downtown and even up by the mall and created our pitch, how we were going to sell these places, whether it's restaurants or some retailers, et cetera, on purchasing an ad or a coupon in one of these three products. We had to think about pricing. How were we going to price a spot? The placement of that spot. How could we incentivize an early commitment or a front page, placement, or if they did multiple products, would there be different pricing, et cetera? So all that kind of stuff we had to just, I don't want to say wing it, but had to come up with that because there really wasn't anything in place before. And we neatly packaged everything, all of us up into a binder. And the two of us, we were off and running. I had never cold called before, but that's basically what we did in order to get a first step, a foot in the door to get a face-to-face meeting with these businesses. And then once we did that, and surprisingly, we were able to get meetings with most of these places, we literally drove all over town dressed in suits, pitching our products. And the big unknown was, would restaurants, would businesses, would they actually want to buy this? So that's kind of what we did for 3 months.
So were there any like war stories, any like horrible rejections or major successes you'd like to share?
I think the major success was, I think it was my first meeting actually. It was Roelof's, and Dan, you may remember Roelof's. I don't think it's open any longer, but it was there for many years before I was there, and then many years after that. But that was one of the longest standing bars / restaurants in College Town. Super well known. The owner had been there forever, and she was very well known. So that was my first meeting, and I knew that if I could just get her to say yes, we'd have a fantastic start. And that would be the a great off and running point, and she did. She was very open to supporting the business and purchasing an ad. I mean, she honestly didn't have to because everybody knew who Roelof's was, and she really didn't need to advertise. But she supported us, and it really wasn't too hard of a pitch. But that gave us and gave me a ton of confidence to continue doing this to everybody else. Biggest failure, there wasn't any huge flop that I can recall. Definitely a lot of rejections for sure. But there wasn't anything embarrassing that happened or anything that, in hindsight was a total disaster. Everybody was, polite, respectable, and, it was a business decision whether to invest with us or not. So no, nothing that was, a major fail, which was good.
Yeah, and obviously through like cold calling and talking to all these different people at such a young age, I'm sure you picked up a lot of skills and a lot of things that you didn't have before you came to Cornell. Looking back, are there any kind of key skills or habits you think from your position at student agencies that kind of really compounded the most over time into your career now?
Yeah, for sure. I think some of those broad skills include just being organized, having a plan, preparing and rehearsing over and over again. Those are things that, they sound very basic, but for me back then and definitely throughout the rest of my career and still now, I find that makes me feel comfortable and confident. I'm not the type of person that can just get up in front of an audience or meet somebody face to face and just, if it's about an important decision, just wing it. I need to have what I want to say in my head. Obviously, you have to be able to pivot based on the dialogue and the back and forth. But just having a general overarching pitch and how you want to deliver something and the points you want to make, I think that goes a long way to getting your points across. And so, our plan as far as who we were going to target, when we were going to target them, making sure that, we made a schedule, we stuck to it, we weren't late, we didn't miss meetings, we came dressed professionally, we had professional looking materials to show and present. All of that stuff I think just increases your chances of success. So for me, that happened for us during that time at student agencies, and it clearly, it has maintained its importance to me in the subsequent years.
That's fantastic. Now, you and I were talking off camera a little bit before we got started, and you're a mom now, and how do you, and you're also like asset management, which is not like a light career, right? Um, how do you balance those things? And what advice might you have to the young women who are at Cornell right now who are thinking about going into like a high octane career like yours, you know, whether it's banking or consulting or, you know, some sort of other track that looks like that? What advice would you have? Like, how do you manage your 20s into your 30s so that you can do both
Yeah.
or not do both, as is the case?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question, and I think a lot of young women think about that and struggle with it, and not just young women, but as they progress in your career, it's a challenge, I'll have to say, and you have to make decisions. I would say that for me, it was important to keep working just because that's me. Some people chose to leave the workforce and they'd rather stay at home and raise their children, and that's what they love to do and devote their spare time to doing other things around the community. For me, that wasn't really what resonated. And I found a place in my career that I can continue to grow and professionally, but also maintain that work-life balance. So number one, I think knowing who you are, whether it's a working mom and you can take on those responsibilities or not, and either is obviously fine. But if you are going to take on those responsibilities and try to balance it, the important things to have is being organized, being on top of your personal life at home, whether it's the kids' schedules or, your husband or wife's or whatever's schedules as well. And just making sure that, you're not letting things slip through the cracks, because that's very easy to do when you have your work schedule and your home schedule, and just making sure the two mesh. And then the other thing too, which is just as important, is having the support at home. So whether that's from your spouse, who also may be working or maybe not, he or she needs to be able to know that his or her spouse is working and has that routine or schedule, and they have theirs, and being able to coordinate that so that you can both do it, and both be able to be there for the kids, or having other family at home as well. My mother-in-law, I'm fortunate enough to have her close by, and she's fantastic with the kids and can step in when she needs to babysit. And then we also, notably have a fantastic nanny, a full-time nanny who we love, and she loves us, and she's like part of our family. So all of those things together, I think, are important. It can happen without some of those, but the family aspect with the spouse is super important, just so that the kids get what they need. Obviously, that can't fall through the cracks, and just being able to back each other up when you need to, and figure things out. So every season when kids' sports and activities change, I have literally an Excel spreadsheet set up for each season as it changes, and I have 3 kids, so they all have different things, different carpool type of arrangements. I have to make notes of who's going to pick up who, where, and when, and who's going to do this and that. So, and it's like a game of Tetris. And that analogy can go for that, and it can go for work, and just you kind of have to fit everything in. A little bit of work and a little bit of planning, but being organized, having the plan, and looking at it every week, and just making sure it works. It can be done. But again, like, I'm also fortunate too to be at a place that, and where I'm in my career, that, and a very supportive boss and supportive colleagues, that if I do need to leave early for whatever reason, be it to pick up a kid or doctor's appointment or whatever it is, my boss is very supportive of that. And I know that I have team members that I can rely on to help support me too.
Is that sort of like tying it back to where, an undergraduate who might be listening to this might be able to use this advice in the future? Like, are there firms that you kind of targeted or didn't target because you knew you had personal aspirations as well as career aspirations? Are there points in interview processes where you're asking certain questions to the firm to make sure that they are receptive to the sort of life you've chosen on the personal side? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. For me, I didn't necessarily target that early on in my career, because early on, I didn't have kids. I was more focused on career. So no, at the time, I wasn't specifically thinking about that. That said, my goal had always been to be on the buy side. Some of it was because of that, just the lifestyle in general. Everyone knows that, a sell side lifestyle is a little bit different than the buy side. So I think there was a little bit of that in terms of just which side of finance I wanted to be on. But specific firms, not really. If I were to go interviewing today, for example, then yes, 100% I would be asking certain questions or seeing how they respond and seeing what the culture is like and all of that. When I was interviewing and looking at Ares, coming from Credit Suisse, at the time I didn't have children, so that wasn't really top of mind. But at the same time, I knew it was a culture that just had very work hard, play hard type of people. So from that perspective, it was a good fit for me. And so while I didn't necessarily talk about family and personal life and stuff like that and how people, balance that, I could just tell from just the regular interview process and meeting with people that they were the types of people that I would enjoy working with. And it all kind of just came together to be such that it is a place that is supportive of family and doing what you need to do for your personal life.
Great. And not to like dive too much more into this topic if you don't want to, but I find it might be useful to kind of paint a picture for what a day in the life of Stephanie looks like with 3 kids at home. And it's like,
Yep.
You'll correct me where I'm wrong, but it's like up at a pretty early hour, probably getting rid of some emails in the inbox, then taking care of the kids for an hour or two, then transition to wherever you're going to be for the day. Probably there's some, texting back and forth with some parent groups, because I'm just pulling from my own experience. Like there's some parent groups that's like, oh no, something blew up and I can't do the ride. And then everyone's scrambling and there's a ride we got to fix now. And then you're like, I got a call at 1:30. And then how does that progress through the end of the day? And I think the piece that I'd like you to kind of connect for the students who might be watching or listening to this is we have 3 values at student agencies: get stuff done, speed wins, and be a professional. How do you manage responsiveness and your team's and superiors' expectations in the workplace when you're going to be offline from 4 to 5:30 on a Wednesday?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good question. I'm happy to walk you through a typical day. We can start with today just as a very typical example. Woke up, I typically wake up at 5:30, and that's really because my kids are still sleeping. They usually don't wake up until 7. And it's usually because I want to go to the gym. And lucky for me, I have a gym in my basement, so I don't have to waste time driving anywhere. I live in the suburbs of New York, by the way, in Westchester County. So go downstairs, quickly check my emails in the morning, make sure nothing's super, important or blowing up or whatever, whether it's personal or work. Quickly check my emails or texts, go downstairs, work out, come back upstairs. By then, either depending on the time, sometimes it'll not quite 5:30, or you know how it is. It's not always exactly, but usually try to get a workout in the morning. By the time I come up, my nanny is just arriving there and the kids are just waking up. So I'll say hi to the kids for a bit, help them with whatever, my little one still likes to get dressed with me, so I'll help her pick out what she wants to wear. My older one might be, finishing up a school project or whatever it may be, and they're eating breakfast at the same time. My nanny's packing their lunch. So a bunch of stuff is happening like that, reminding them, you have the bus home today, or you're doing this after school today, so you're going home with XYZ, and then I'm picking you up, or daddy's going to come pick you up, and just going through the whole daily routine with them to what they're doing, because some days it's bus home, some days it's not bus home. And then I get ready for work myself, and then I'm out the door and they go to school, and then I'm in the office by buy side I can get in 9:30, not a big deal. Sell side's a lot earlier than that, and so it's also where I am in my career. I can come in a little bit later, but during the train ride, I'm on my phone, texting, emailing, answering emails at work, going through the day's calendar and seeing what I have coming up. Something like that, like you just said, Dan, about, oh, somebody's sick, they're not going to be there. Now, my middle one doesn't have a ride home, figuring that out, re-coordinating things. also looking at tomorrow. So tomorrow's going to be busy, and my husband has to go take my little one to T-ball, and my middle one has a birthday party somewhere. I'm taking my older one to Norwalk for a competition. So who's going to pick up the middle one from the birthday party, and can he get there in time after T-ball? So stuff like that. And then come into the office, get settled, have a meeting at 10 o'clock until 11, then continue to do some work, then following up from stuff from yesterday, have a call at 12. I had this at 1, which I moved back to 1:15. And then I have a 2 o'clock. So, it's just a little bit of multitasking for sure, both personally and professionally. But I have a good team. I have a good team at home. I have a good team here in the office. And we stay coordinated and in communication all the time. So your example, what do I do when I'm offline between 4 and 6 or something because I have to leave? I usually always have my phone with me. If there's something super important, I'll be checking that. Usually there's nothing that crazy, but I'll be sure to just be accessible if I need to be. And if I can't be accessible, as soon as I get home, I'll look at whatever it is that I need to, or after the kids go down, I'll log back on and check in on stuff. But I have a pretty competent team that, I'm confident we can get things done without me being there all the time, which is also one of the big reasons why we're successful as a firm and as a group, because we have just many team members that can pitch in when needed.
Yeah, definitely. I want to bring us back to student agencies. I guess throughout your time at Cornell, what would you say set kind of student agencies apart from the other things that you did professionally or not professionally, and how did that kind of help you prepare or propel yourself into your career? Either through having so many anecdotes when you interview, or just kind of what we've talked about, the skills and the other things that you've developed from your time.
Yeah, definitely the anecdotes from student agencies was helpful during interview processes for sure. It's an experience that is different than most other students that have done whatever other types of typical internships that they do, whether it's at a research firm or, a consulting firm or, even just iBanking. Running a business yourself and being responsible, soup to nuts for the entire business and actually managing a P&L, that's as real world as it gets. So, having that experience and being able to talk to it was certainly important. And just the soft skills, the people skills that you develop when having to interact with adults at the time. I was just a kid and developing that confidence and being able to, interact with them on a personal level and professional level, and just gaining that ability and confidence in oneself to be able to do that, I think was big for me.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I definitely feel the same way, being, coming into college 18, 19 years old and now being in charge of a, mixed use $30 million building. And it's kind of really the trend with all the guests and alumni that we've brought back onto the podcast. Is just, it helps build your confidence. It really helps change you for the better professionally. So yeah, it's great to hear. To wrap us up, kind of, looking back at your time, if you had to do it all over again, what advice would you give yourself?
That's a good question. What advice would I give myself? I don't think I would change anything, first and foremost, which is, I'm very happy with where I've ended up and my path to get here, which I think you and I talked about, or Carson and I talked about, was a little bit non-traditional. But I think trusting in yourself, not being afraid of change, kind of going with the flow when things don't go your way and figuring it out. I hate the cliche of things happen for a reason, but I do believe that's the case. Certainly did for me. And sometimes it may not feel that way at the time, but everything sort of works itself out. And, I had a couple setbacks here and there in my career and a couple of unknowns and uncertainties and, living through the great financial crisis and having all of that happen was certainly not ideal. But, I think without that, I wouldn't be where I am. So I think just trusting yourself, betting on yourself, and working hard. I mean, you obviously things do happen for a reason, but you still have to work hard. And if you do all those things, and I think wherever you want to go, you can go. So that's kind of the advice I would give.
Well, that's fantastic, Stephanie. We really appreciate you sharing all of your experiences, both on the personal and professional side. And we wish you all the best. And hopefully we will be able to see you at one of our alumni meetups that happen in February. Maybe we'll have to wait a few years till the kids are out of the house, but that usually is going to happen at the end of February. So again, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.